Welcome to our STS-48 post-landing news conference. Our players from your left are General Forrest McCartney, KSC Director, and Robert L. Crippen, Shuttle Director. We'll start off with General McCartney. General?
Well, it's a good morning. I was glad to see us get a successful landing. I'd preferred, of course, it to be in Florida, but it's a great landing, and we're ready to accept the vehicle wherever it landed. So we're anxious to now take charge of the vehicle. Kennedy folks will, and turn it around, get it back here, and get it ready to fly. So we're just delighted that, to have the vehicle back, and I'm sure you looked at the TV coverage as I did, and I really don't know anything more than what we saw, but it looked like it was in great shape. So we get back here in a few days and start working on it to turn it around.
And I'd like to echo that. I think it was a super mission. The Upper Atmospheric Research Satellite, or URS as we referred to it, is deployed and appears to be working well. The vehicle that we used, Forrest and his folks gave us, had as few anomalies as you could possibly get on the flight. It was really smooth all the way. And I'm sure some of you people are disappointed that we didn't get here to Kennedy tonight, but if you remember when I sat here and told you about how we were going to play these rules, that we were going to be conservative about it, and the weather was just dynamic enough tonight that we were not comfortable with it, and consequently we landed someplace that we were comfortable with. And that's probably the way it's going to turn out in the future when we play trying to come back to Kennedy. But all in all, it was a super flight, and I'm very proud of the way the team executed it.
Okay, ready for questions? Jim?
Jim Banky, Florida Today. First of all, a question for General McCartney. Could you talk about how you need to respond now to the fact that it landed out there with your KSC folks? You've got a team out there. What do you do that you have to add?
We had enough out there, Jim, to take care of the immediate needs to safe the vehicle and get it in a proper configuration, and then we'll send the remaining number of techs out to do what we need to do to turn it around. So we had kept them back here, sent a team out sufficient in size to take care of the vehicle, and that's where we'll continue to operate.
And then for Captain Crippen, a philosophy question about landing. One question, why didn't you stay up an extra day at possible coming back here tomorrow? What was the rationale?
When we looked at the weather was forecast. In fact, even this morning they were saying that today was probably going to be the best day, even though it potentially was going to be good tomorrow. It was not as forecast to be as good as it was today. And given that kind of criteria, I have left it up to my team, Brewster Shaw and the flight control team, to decide what they think makes sense. And they put it all together and decided we ought to go ahead and come in tonight. That doesn't mean that sometime in the future we might not go the other way.
Dan?
Yeah, Dan Billow from WESH-TV. General McCartney, what kind of a milestone would it have been, or will it be, when you do the first night landing at Kennedy Space Center?
Well, of course, it'll be a first, but it's just one of many firsts, and that we've either accomplished or will accomplish in the future. And we were just prepared to accept the vehicle, and I think, as Cripp said, it shows that the program is matured. It considers the conditions and responds. The team responds to the conditions, and we were prepared to accept the vehicle either here or at Edwards, and the conditions were such that it was determined better to go into Edwards, and when that condition turns around and it lands here first time at night, why, maybe the local citizens will turn on their lights again, and we'll accept it here.
Mark?
Mark Carrell, Houston Chronicle, for Captain Crippen. Does the experience tonight dampen your, does it change your hope to land here at night? And do you have any mission in the near future that you might try it again?
Mark, just what happened tonight was what I knew we were going to be faced with. In fact, I think I told the same group at some point in time that the way I've set up the budget now, would allow like 60% of the landings to be out at Edwards and about 40% here but we're going to, when all the conditions allow us, we are going to set up to try to land at Kennedy, be it the daylight or at night. From my perspective, a runway in the dark looks like a runway in the dark, no matter where it's located. Physically, it doesn't make any difference. I can't off the top of my head tell you when the next potential night landing is, Mark.
Dave?
Dave Pignanelli, NPR. What was the problem, line of sight, or just the fact that the cloud was within the 30-mile radius, or both?
The weather was dynamic enough such that we couldn't assure ourselves we wouldn't have showers sitting over the runway or over part of the glide path when we actually executed the landing. And there were showers at the time the landing would have occurred in the area.
You set the criteria. I think the criteria for cloud cover, we were just about within limits of cloud cover, but there were showers within 20 miles, and that's what the criteria says, and it was a good call.
And when we purposely made the criteria extra conservative because of the weather here being as dynamic as it is, and I believe we executed just like we said we would.
Todd?
Todd Halverson, Florida Today. I guess for Captain Crippen, I've heard a number of different figures for the cost of the ferry flight from California back to here. I've heard 1 million, 3 million, 1.8, 2.8. Can you kind of give us an idea what the real figure is?
It's in that ballpark, Todd. I have not been able to pin it down to the specific numbers, and it probably fluctuates from time to time depending on the circumstances. But it's on that order. Just the fuel for the 747 runs somewhere, I believe, around somewhere between 300 and 500,000 just to handle that part of it. And then we've got to take care of the people that General McCartney talked about moving across. So it's definitely more conservative or less expensive when I land here, but if we land here in circumstances that are not appropriate, it could be much more expensive. So in my opinion, this is the proper way to execute the program.
Follow, can you tell me how landing in California is going to affect Discovery's flow for the next mission in terms of, will you be able to meet that launch date in January?
We are laying out all the flows right now, assuming the landings are going to be at Edwards.
Take one more question here before we go to Goddard. Steve?
Stephen Young with Spaceflight Magazine. Because you've not got your full team out in California, is it going to take you longer to get Discovery back? And will there also be some kind of impact to Atlantis and flights in the STU of Discovery?
No, I don't think it'll take us appreciably longer to get it back. We'll go out, they'll be there today, and I don't see any significant coupling between this landing in California and the next flight. I think that 104 is now going through the OPF. We are putting the chin panel back on, and I really don't see the coupling being significant. So I would expect 104 to be essentially independent of any significant impact of going to the West Coast.
Do we have some questions at Goddard?
Good morning from Goddard Spaceflight Center. This is A.R. Hogan at Astra Magazine and Writers Plus. Could you describe what differences there are involved in preparing for a night landing versus a day landing in terms of safing the vehicle, in terms of getting the crew out, what differences, if any, there are? And also, could you estimate how many landing-related NASA personnel were on duty at Kennedy this morning versus at Edwards, just to give us a comparison of what a prime site versus a backup site would entail, please? And I have a follow-up.
Well,
actually, from the ground handling portion of it, the only thing that's different is the fact that we have lights out there. That there really is. We have lights to help us work around the vehicle. We have to have the lights that light up the runway for the crew landing and the maintenance of those. But other than that, there really is nothing different from that standpoint. And I'm not sure I can give you the exact numbers off the top of my head, Forrest.
I'm not sure I can exact, but there are about 50 people out at Kennedy people out at Edwards that will be looking after the vehicle until the remaining techs get there, and I expect there's a couple hundred techs or so that are involved in wherever it goes. So I don't consider that to be such a big deal at all. I think the thing that we've most primarily concerned about is making sure that we bring the orbiter down where it is the safest to bring it down. And you saw that today, where this morning, where it was determined to be safer to bring it down at California than in Florida, and that the team be properly prepared to respond to either location, and we are. So that's kind of a summary as I see it.
Was there a follow-up?
Yes, there is. Could you explain how the infrared pictures that we saw this morning from Edwards are they useful from a technical standpoint in seeing how the APUs are venting? Does this give you some data about the spacecraft's performance that you don't get from a daytime landing? And also, this is a basic question, but we were talking around here and didn't know the answer. Why are there 2 sonic booms instead of 1 or 3? Thank you.
The infrared cameras are primarily just to allow us to visually see what's happening to the vehicle on landing, which you can't since it's dark. However, if we did encounter some type of anomaly that dealt with heat, like a fire or something of that nature, it would give us a good indication of it. And you can work that same kind of data off of cameras in the daylight as well. We use infrared cameras here for launch quite often. The reason there are 2 sonic booms on the orbiter is its configuration off the nose and off the wing actually have 2 different places that it's carrying shocks, and there are 2 shocks, significant shocks that are carried with the vehicle at the time about the time it comes overhead, and each one of those passing by your wave of your eardrums gives you a boom sound.
Okay, we're back at Kennedy while we're trying to work a phone patch for Dryden. Todd?
I noticed on the NASA Select after the landing that there seemed to have been a small hydraulic leak on the landing gear. You got any feedback on that?
That was minor drip coming off the oleo strut. That's not abnormal to see those kinds of things. That wasn't what I would refer to as a leak.
Beth?
Beth Vicky with Reuters. This is kind of a broad question, and it's early, excuse me, but there seems to have been a considerable discrepancy this morning between what your radar was showing weather-wise in Houston and what Steve Nagel was seeing from the aircraft. And I was wondering if you could just kind of size up that discrepancy for us in terms of what it might mean to the program in the future as far as forecasting for landings and what it might mean politically if you were to, say, get the Air Force here a little more involved with the weather forecasting.
First, it is normal for clouds that have low moisture content or coming down rain rarely show up on radar. So there's, as far as I was concerned, there was no discrepancy. It is one of the reasons that we have not only the radar, but we have an airplane flying to give us visual observations. And we already have the Air Force Weather Station here heavily involved with the weather forecast and communicating with our spacecraft meteorological group that we have at Houston and doing the forecast. So I don't see any changes, and I didn't really see any discrepancies, Beth.
Well, I guess what I was getting at is I heard at one point a call from Houston, and I didn't identify the speaker, but he was talking, I think, to Nagel, and he said, well, the radar that we have here is a little bit older than the information that you're getting there. And I latched onto that, and it kind of confused me as to why you would not have as up-to-date
They have a live,
there.
real-time radar picture available to them in Houston, unless there was, for some reason, they had a momentary transmission delay, and I wasn't aware of anything of that nature.
Yes, I would say that the weather was dynamic at the time, and anytime you take a snapshot of the radar, and if you look, there's usually a time in the corner of it, and it's not uncommon for it to be a minute or two old. So I don't think there's any significance that I recall, Crip, on delay of getting the radar data out there. And that's exactly why they have the STA up there, is to see what's happening in real time and to see with the eye what it is, which can give you better information than the radar can. The people over at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station Weather Detachment provide us outstanding support. It's one of the most advanced weather stations that the Air Force has. It has the latest instruments that we can have to help us call the weather. And if you look at the level of expertise of both the civilians as well as the military over there, I think you'll agree that they are the best in the business. So weather forecasting, as you know, is difficult. We have a first-class team there with first-class equipment doing things that are state-of-the-art or better. And I think we'll continue to rely on them for inputs. And Crip, I don't see any reason for us not to continue to rely on the STA for both launch weather and for landing weather.
Oh, we'll continue to. In fact, you know, even when we're overseas, we fly. We don't have STAs over there, but we fly airplanes to get the visual observations as well.
Do we have some questions of Dryden?
Associated Press. I'm going to shoot a few questions at you at once because of our tenuous hookup here. First of all, which of you made the statement about it being a super flight at the beginning? We didn't have video to see you. Second, would the shuttle have been visible over Oregon and or California on its way in like it was supposed to have been over the East Coast? Third, do you have any information yet on the condition of the orbiter, dings, brakes, tires, that sort of thing? And finally, when will the ferry flight be and how many days will it last?
That's a lot. Let's see. I guess I was. Maybe we both said it was a super flight. I think it was, and I believe we agree on that.
Certainly do agree on that.
Let's see. You ran through all the questions. It should have been visible coming in over the down the west coast, just like it would have been visible here. And we've seen that same phenomena previously. It's in the dark. There's a nice ionized layer around the orbiter, which puts a nice little glow in the air. So I'm certain that some folks, if they were awake, managed to get a good look at it. I don't know of any real anomalies that occurred during entry. Everything worked very well. So I'm not aware of anything.
I'm not aware of any either, Grant.
Okay.
What about dings, that sort of thing, just the standard? Do you have any information back there yet? We don't hear.
I'm sorry, we cut you out. Say again.
Any information on dings on the orbiter or brake damage, anything like that yet? And the last question was the ferry flight, when and how many days?
Crip and I both were looking very hard to see what dings we could see, and we saw nothing more than what probably you saw on the television. It looked pretty good to me.
It looked good, but it takes a detailed examination of somebody walking around counting the various ones, and that has not happened. We usually don't know about any brake damage unless it's excuse me, something rather severe until we pull off the brakes and go examine them. We've had excellent results from these new brakes that we have that we refer to as carbon-carbon, so I wouldn't anticipate that we have any problems. And the ferry date will be approximately a week, but I don't have a specific date at this point.
Anything else from Dryden?
Brian Bland with Associated Press Radio. I wondered if you had any further thoughts on the near miss or the avoidance episode. Do you think the shuttles will always